how to make a knife with a gut hook. We're going to use a standard 5/8 by 6.5 inch railroad track spike. Ours are stamped HC for high carbon on the back end, as you can see here. Taking it over now to the 1949 vintage Little Giant power hammer, which hits pretty hard for its size and makes quick work of spreading the material out. You can see we've gone for some width. Now we've offset the blade relative to the handle, and now we're putting that little finger choil in, drawing it down to a point. Going to plop it in the vise here real quick and give it 2 twists. Final check for straightness before we head up now to the grinding shop. You can see it's quite a mess, but you know, we actually use this place. It's not just influencer stuff. We actually make knives here. Got lots of machines for grinding steel. This is a big old 14-inch wheel, which makes pretty quick work of hogging down those bevels. It is a hollow grind. You can see they're pretty rough yet, so they're going to need some refinement. This second wheel is what they used to call a glazing wheel. It's basically a fiber wheel with some horsehide glue on it and a loose abrasive grain glued to it. We're just going to use this now to polish the spot where the Maker's Mark stamp is going to be, because you don't want deep scratches after you've done the Maker's Mark, because you'll end up washing out the stamp when you go to grind it after heat treatment. Here's the stamping process itself. There's probably more efficient ways of doing this, but basically I still have to stamp each one of these by hand, just like this. Once we've done that, we'll put it back in the forge, get a nice cherry red, and go in for the quench to harden the metal. Now, I know some of you guys can't get your railroad spike hard in the oil quench, but I throw a few of those little blue pills in the oil and they get really, really hard. Anyway, I've got several belt grinders in the shop. Some of them are set up to run a 1x72 belt, and some of them run a 2x72. Sometimes I find the thinner belt a little bit more handy for especially getting around tight curves and whatnot. And we're going to polish just the outside profile first, as well as the highlights on the twist. Then we reglaze the spot where the Maker's Mark was. You can see I'm taking care not to wash out the stamp too much, so it's still readable and pretty. And then now we're going to go on to surfacing the blades. And we're going to do this. You can see we're continuing the hollow grind that we started on the stone. And we're going to change out the belt and go maybe 2 or 3 different grit progressions before moving on to some more polishing wheels and getting a satin finish. Now finally, to make the hook itself, well, that's pretty simple. We're just going to trace it with some pen, a little cutout, just like we did on our original drawing. To cut it, we'll need a cutting wheel on a bench grinder like this. You can see how I've got this set up with some modified tool rests, going slowly and carefully and just making that little notch on all of these. To sharpen it, a surface grinding wheel 1/4 inch thick. I find the pink ones work best. You'll need something a little harder than the wheel, such as this rock, to shape that little stone to the final inside profile of the hook you're sharpening. A quick word of caution, this should be obvious, but these wheels are pretty fragile, and when you run them like this, it's kind of dangerous. I've actually had one blow up in my face before, but I dodged it like Donald Trump. So if you can't be safe, at least be lucky. Now we're going to glaze it on another one of these polishing wheels made from a couple pieces of leather stitched together, and that'll smooth and polish and sharpen the inside of that nice little gut hook. For a finishing touch, we're going to make some little file work or jimping on the back. Not only does that look pretty, it's kind of a nice thing to have in your hands if you are gutting an animal or something in the field. It helps to prevent slipping and kind of feels nice on the thumb. Now we're going to get our final satin polish and throw a couple fine belts on, get our final edge. I typically go from about a 120 belt to a 400, and then just move straight over to the bare felt wheel with a little green buffing rouge on there. Just takes a little bit of patience and a bit of a touch, and it's done. Here we go, guys. Some gut hook hunting knives. What do you think? I think they turned out pretty well. These ought to serve you well if you're out in the woods. Let me know what you like, what you don't like, and most importantly, what you'd like to see made next. Thanks for watching, everyone.